The sky was dark with smoke. The land smelled of ash and blood. The alien mother walked slowly, her two children clinging to her torn cloak. Once, this place was their home, filled with voices, laughter, and the smell of warm food. Now there was nothing but broken walls and silent bodies hidden under the dust. Her heart ached with every step, but she kept walking because if she stopped, her children would lose even the little hope left inside them. The youngest child stumbled, too weak to keep his balance. He had not eaten in 2 days, and his small hands shook as he held his sister's arm. The mother bent down quickly, lifting him, though her own body was trembling. Her strength was fading, but the thought of letting her children collapse pushed her forward. The older one, a girl with sharp but frightened eyes, kept looking around, afraid of every shadow. She whispered, "Mother, are they coming back?" The mother did not answer. She did not want to tell the truth, that the ones who had destroyed their home might return to finish what they had started. The village road was quiet. Strange silence filled the air. Even the birds that once lived among the trees were gone. Every corner reminded her of something she had lost. She saw the broken market stalls where her mate once worked. She remembered his smile, the way he promised to bring back sweets for the children. He had died fighting when the raiders came. She had seen him fall, his body struck down while trying to shield them. She had pulled the children away, dragging them into the woods, but she could never erase the last image of him lying there, unmoving. Now, only ruins were left. The mother's steps grew slower, her eyes scanning for anything useful, food scraps, water, a place to rest. But everything was burned. The attackers had left nothing behind. The children's breaths grew heavier. The little boy whimpered, and his sister tried to comfort him, but her voice shook too much. The mother knew they were close to giving up. As the sun began to set, the shadows grew long. That was when she noticed movement in the distance. A tall figure stood among the ruins, half hidden behind a broken wall. Her heart froze. She tightened her grip on her children and pulled them closer. Her mind raced. Was it another raider? Was it one of the soldiers who had slaughtered their neighbors? Slowly, the figure stepped out of the shadows. It was not one of her kind. It was a human. Her breath caught in her throat. Humans were whispered about in her world, creatures of another race, often hated and distrusted. Some called them dangerous, others called them weak, but she had never seen one here before. His clothes were torn, his face marked with dirt and scars. He carried no weapon in his hands, only a small bag over his shoulder. His eyes, though, were sharp and alive, watching her and the children with a strange intensity. Fear surged inside her chest. She pushed her children behind her and raised a broken stick as if it were a weapon. Her hands shook, but she showed her teeth in defiance. The human did not move closer. He simply stood there, silent, studying them as if trying to decide something. The mother's heart pounded so loudly she could hear nothing else. She wanted to run, but there was nowhere safe to go. Her daughter whispered, "Mother, who is that?" The mother hushed her quickly, never taking her eyes off the human. The boy peeked from behind her leg, his small eyes wide with curiosity instead of fear. Children did not understand the dangers yet. The mother wished she could share that innocence, but she knew better. The human took a slow step forward. The mother gripped the stick tighter. Her body trembled, but she shouted, "Stay away!" Her voice cracked, yet it echoed through the broken walls. The human froze, raising his hand slowly to show he meant no harm. His eyes softened, and for a moment she saw something unexpected in them. Not threat, not hunger, but pity. That single look confused her. Why would a human, a stranger, pity her? What did he see in her children's tired faces? She felt anger at herself for hesitating. She reminded herself this was the enemy, or at least someone who could betray them. Yet she could not ignore the way her children were staring at him, especially the boy. The little one whispered, "He's not bad, Mother." The mother's heart twisted. She wanted to believe her son's words, but trust was dangerous. Trust could kill them. Still, the human did not move closer. He only lowered his hands slowly, then reached into his bag. The mother tensed, expecting a weapon, ready to throw herself in front of her children. But instead, he pulled out something small. He placed it gently on the ground and stepped back. The mother squinted through the fading light. It was food, a piece of bread, rough and plain, but food nonetheless. Her stomach clenched painfully at the sight. Her children's eyes locked on it, hunger clear in their faces. The human did not speak, only gestured softly for them to take it. She did not move. Her pride screamed at her not to accept anything from him. But her children's trembling hands pulled at her cloak. Their whispers broke her heart. They were begging for it. Slowly, with caution, she stepped forward, never letting go of the stick. She picked up the bread, broke it in half, and gave it to her children. They devoured it, their small faces brightening for the first time in days. The human watched quietly, his eyes tired but calm. He did not try to approach again. He simply stood there, like a shadow guarding them. The mother's fear did not fade, but another feeling began to stir in her chest: confusion, curiosity, and the tiniest spark of hope. As the night fell over the ruins, the human turned and walked a few steps away, but not far. He sat down near the broken wall, his back to them, as if to show he would not harm them. The mother pulled her children close, whispering for them to rest. Yet her eyes never left the strange figure. For the first time since the world had fallen apart, she wondered if this meeting was not the end, but the beginning of something she could not yet understand. The morning came slowly, cold and gray. The mother woke to the sound of her children coughing. Their small bodies were weak and their faces pale. She touched their foreheads and felt the heat of fever. Panic filled her heart. She had nothing left: no medicine, no food, no safe place. She looked around and then remembered the human. He was still there, sitting by the broken wall, his head resting against the stone. He looked tired, like someone who had seen too many battles, yet he had not left them in the night. The mother felt anger rise inside her chest. Why was he still here? What did he want? She had told herself it was only pity that made him give bread. But why did he stay? Was it a trick? She shook her head. She could not trust him, not yet. Still, her children's hungry eyes told her she had little choice. The boy pulled at her sleeve and whispered, "Mother, please, food." His voice was so soft that it broke her heart. The girl, older and stronger, tried to hide her hunger, but her eyes were fixed on the human's bag. The mother clenched her fists. Her pride told her to turn away, to keep distance, but a mother's love told her something else. She had to keep them alive, no matter what. The human noticed their whispers. Slowly, he reached into his bag again. The mother tensed, ready to shield her children, but he pulled out dried meat and a small container of water. He placed them on the ground between them, just as before, and stepped back without a word. His actions were careful, not rushed. He moved as if he knew she feared him. The little boy crawled forward, his hands shaking. The mother almost stopped him, but the hunger in his eyes was too much. He grabbed the meat and stuffed it into his mouth, chewing with desperate speed. The girl shared the water with him, drops spilling down her chin as she drank too fast. The mother sat still, watching them, her heart torn apart. She hated that they needed the human's help, yet she could not deny the truth. Without him, her children would not survive another day. The human watched them eat, his face unreadable. Then, for the first time, he spoke. His voice was low, rough, but not cruel. "They need more than food," he said. His words were clear, though accented differently from her language. The mother stiffened. She did not want to hear his voice. She wanted to keep the wall of distrust between them, yet something about the way he spoke, gentle, without demand, made her pause. She asked coldly, "Why do you help us?" Her voice was sharp, meant to cut. The human looked at her for a long moment before answering. "Because they are children. Because you need help." His answer shocked her. It was too simple. She expected lies, hidden motives, maybe even a trap. But his words carried no trick. He said them like a man who had seen suffering and could not turn away. She wanted to challenge him, to tell him humans were selfish and cruel. Yet when she looked into his eyes, she saw only exhaustion, pain, and something else she could not name, perhaps kindness. The boy, his mouth full of food, looked up at the human and whispered, "Thank you." The girl quickly added, "Yes, thank you." The mother froze. Her children had spoken to him. They had accepted him already. Fear spread through her chest. She wanted to scold them, to remind them that humans could not be trusted. But when she saw the smiles on their tired faces, she could not bring herself to say it. For the first time in weeks, her children looked alive. The human gave a small nod in return. Then he sat back down, pulling a small piece of bread for himself. He ate quietly, not asking for thanks, not making demands. His silence was strange, almost respectful. The mother did not understand him, and that confused her more than anything. As the day passed, the human did not leave. Instead, he walked a short distance away, searching among the ruins. He came back with a bundle of sticks and broken metal. At first, the mother thought he meant to build a trap, but soon she realized he was making a small fire. Sparks flew, and a tiny flame grew, giving warmth to the cold air. Her children gathered close to it, their shivers easing. The human sat on the other side of the fire, keeping distance, as if he knew she still did not trust him. The mother's heart battled itself. She could not deny what she saw. He had given them food, water, and warmth. Yet her mind whispered warnings. Humans always wanted something in return. She waited for him to demand her labor, or worse, her children. But the demand never came. He simply stayed near, silent, watchful, almost protective. As night returned, the children curled up by the fire, their breaths steady as they slept. The mother sat awake, her eyes on the human. He did not sleep at first. He stayed awake, scanning the shadows like a guard. She watched his hand rest near a small knife at his side, not drawn, but ready. It made her uneasy, yet also strangely safe. For the first time since her mate's death, she felt the presence of someone who could protect them. The human finally closed his eyes for a short rest, but even in sleep, his body was tense, ready to move at danger's call. The mother lowered her gaze, her thoughts spinning. She did not want to admit it, but she already knew the truth. Without him, her children would have died. With him, they had a chance. Her pride still whispered against it, but her heart knew. This human was no enemy, not today. And though she would never say it aloud, she felt the smallest flicker of trust begin to grow. It was fragile, like a candle in the wind, but it was there. And she wondered if this was the first step towards something she could not yet understand. The storm rolled in without warning. The sky grew black, and heavy clouds pressed down on the land. Cold rain started to fall, first in soft drops, then in sheets of water that hit the ruins like stones. The mother pulled her children close, trying to shield them with her cloak, but the fabric was too thin and torn. Her daughter shivered, her small body shaking from the cold, and the little boy's lips turned blue. Panic filled the mother's heart. If they stayed in the open, the storm would take them before night ended. The human stood up quickly. He looked at the sky, then at the children. Without speaking, he motioned for them to follow. The mother hesitated. Her pride told her not to rely on him, but the rain was already soaking through her clothes, and her children were coughing. She had no choice. With a heavy heart, she nodded, and the human began to lead the way through the broken remains of the village. They walked for a long time, slipping through mud and broken stone until the human stopped at a half-buried building. Its roof was broken, but part of it still stood, enough to keep out the rain. He pushed aside debris and made space for them to enter. The mother guided her children inside, their wet feet dragging across the cold floor. The air smelled of dust and burnt wood, but at least it was dry. The human set down his bag and began to work quickly. He gathered sticks he had collected earlier, arranging them into a small pile. With careful hands, he struck flint against metal, sending sparks into the dry leaves. Soon, a small flame appeared, spreading into a steady fire. The warmth filled the small room, and the children huddled near it, sighing with relief. The mother sat a little farther back, still keeping her eyes on the human, suspicious of his every move. The storm outside grew louder. The rain crashed against the broken walls, and the wind howled like a hungry beast. Thunder shook the ground, and the children gasped, pressing closer to their mother. The human did not flinch. He sat with his back to the entrance, his eyes focused on the storm, his knife lying across his lap. His presence felt like a barrier between them and the chaos outside. As the fire burned, the boy's eyelids grew heavy. He leaned against his sister, whispering softly, "It's warm now." The girl stroked his hair, her own eyes closing from exhaustion. Soon, both children were asleep, their faces calmer than they had been in weeks. The mother watched them, her heart aching with both love and fear. She whispered a silent promise to protect them, no matter the cost. But her gaze returned to the human. Why did he help them? Why had he not left when he had the chance? She could not understand him. No one gave something for nothing, not in this broken world. She wrapped her arms around herself, whispering in her mind that she would never fully trust him. Yet, the truth was undeniable. Without him, her children would not have survived the day. The night deepened. The storm did not end. The human sat awake, keeping watch. The mother tried to rest, but every sound outside made her heart jump. At one point, she heard something strange. Footsteps, not theirs, not the storm. Her eyes widened, and she turned to the human. He was already alert, his hand gripping the knife tightly, his body frozen like a predator waiting in silence. The sound grew louder. Something moved outside the shelter. The mother clutched her children, shaking them awake in silence. The boy whimpered, and she pressed her hand gently against his mouth. Her daughter's eyes widened in terror, but she stayed quiet. The human raised his hand to signal them to stay low. The footsteps circled the ruined shelter. A shadow passed across the small opening. The mother's breath caught in her throat. She remembered the raiders who had destroyed their home. Were they back to finish the job? She pulled her children tighter, tears forming in her eyes. If they were found, there would be no escape. The human crouched near the entrance, his muscles tense, knife ready. For a long moment, the only sounds were the storm and the steps outside. Then came a low growl. The mother's heart pounded harder. It was not raiders. It was something worse. A beast. The growl grew deeper, followed by scratching against the stone wall. The children shook with fear, their tiny bodies trembling in their mother's arms. She closed her eyes, whispering prayers she had almost forgotten. But the human did not move back. He leaned forward, his eyes sharp, waiting for the right moment. The beast sniffed near the entrance, its shadow long and heavy against the firelight. The human picked up a burning stick from the fire. He waited until the beast pushed its head closer. Then, with one quick motion, he hurled the burning wood into the darkness. The beast roared, startled, stumbling back into the storm. Its growls faded as it retreated, frightened by the fire. The mother let out the breath she had been holding. Her arms loosened slightly around the children, though her heart still raced. The little boy buried his face against her chest, whispering, "Is it gone?" She kissed his forehead and nodded, though her body still shook. The human placed the knife down and returned to sit by the fire, his expression calm, as if what had just happened was nothing unusual. The mother stared at him in silence. Her fear of him was still there, but now it mixed with something new: respect. She had seen him face danger without hesitation, protecting them when he had no reason to. The children, though frightened, slowly drifted back to sleep, comforted by the fire's warmth and the human's quiet watch. The mother stayed awake longer, her eyes never leaving him. She hated that her heart felt lighter knowing he was there. She hated that her pride was weakening. Yet she could not deny the truth. That night, as the storm raged outside, the mother realized something she had never expected to feel again: safety. Not complete, not certain, but enough to let her close her eyes for a few moments without fear. And though she would not admit it, even to herself, it was because of the human who had stepped between her family and the darkness. The storm passed, leaving the air cold and heavy with mist. The ruins were wet and silent, but the mother felt something was wrong. Her instincts told her danger was near. She looked at the human. He was standing at the entrance of the shelter, his eyes sharp, scanning the distance. He did not speak, but the tension in his body told her he sensed it too. The children were still half asleep, their faces pale but calm. The mother whispered for them to stay quiet. She held them close, her heart beating hard. Then the sound came, boots crushing wet stone, voices carried by the wind. Not beasts this time, not the storm, raiders. Her blood ran cold. She knew those voices. They belonged to the same ones who had burned her home, killed her mate, and left her with nothing. Fear wrapped around her chest like chains. She wanted to run, but there was nowhere left to go. The footsteps grew louder. Shadows moved across the broken walls. She pulled her children close, whispering, "Don't move. Don't make a sound." The human turned and looked at her. His face was calm, though his eyes burned with something fierce. He gestured for her to stay hidden, then stepped toward the entrance. The mother almost cried out. Did he not understand? These raiders would kill him. They were armed and cruel. She wanted to drag him back, but she froze when she saw his expression. There was no fear in his eyes, only determination. The first raider appeared, carrying a blade. He sneered when he saw the human standing in his path. "What do we have here?" he growled. More followed, their cruel laughter filling the air. They saw the fire, the bag, the small signs of life. They knew survivors were here. The mother clutched her children, whispering prayers she no longer believed in. The human spoke, his voice firm. Leave. One word, strong and steady. The raiders laughed louder. They mocked him, calling him weak, calling him foolish. One of them spat at the ground and raised his weapon. Move aside, human. We'll take what we want. The human did not move. His body stood like a wall between the raiders and the family hidden behind him. For a moment, the mother saw her dead mate in his stance, the same refusal to give ground, the same courage. Her heart twisted with pain and confusion. The first raider lunged forward. The human reacted instantly. He sidestepped, grabbed the raider's arm, and with a swift motion, twisted it until the man cried out in pain. The knife clattered to the ground. The human kicked it away, then struck the raider hard, sending him crashing into the mud. The others roared with anger. They rushed forward together. The mother covered her children's eyes, but she could not stop herself from peeking through her fingers. The fight was brutal. The human was outnumbered, yet he moved with skill and focus. He ducked under a blade, struck with his fists, and used the raider's own strength against them. Every movement was sharp, every strike purposeful. One raider slashed his arm. Blood ran down, but the human did not stop. He pushed forward, driving his shoulder into another attacker, sending him flying into the wall. The mother's heart pounded with both fear and awe. She had thought humans were weak, but this one fought with the strength of someone who had nothing left to lose. The children whimpered, afraid of the noise. The mother held them close, whispering, "Stay still. Don't look." But her own eyes could not turn away. She had never seen anyone fight like this, not even among her own people. The last raider hesitated when he saw his companions fall. He spat curses and fled into the mist, leaving his comrades groaning on the ground. The human stood in the middle of the ruin, his chest rising and falling, blood dripping from his arm. His clothes were torn, his face streaked with dirt and sweat. Yet his eyes were steady. He turned back toward the shelter. The mother stared at him, her breath caught in her throat. He had risked everything to protect them. He had fought with no promise of reward, no reason except choice. She could not understand it. She had expected him to run, to save himself, to leave them as so many others had. But he had not. He had stood his ground, even when it meant facing death. The children broke free from her arms and ran toward him. The boy clung to his leg, tears streaming down his face. "You saved us," he cried. The girl wiped her eyes and whispered, "Father would have fought like you." The words stabbed into the mother's chest. She wanted to silence them, to remind them that this man was not their father, not even their kind. But the words caught in her throat. Because deep inside, she knew the children were not wrong. The human knelt down, wincing from his wounds, and placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. His eyes softened as he looked at the girl. He said nothing, but his silence spoke more than words. He had taken their safety as his duty, without asking, without demanding. The mother felt her pride crumbling. She wanted to keep the wall between them, to see him only as a stranger. Yet her heart betrayed her. It saw him as something else, as the protector her children had lost, as the strength she no longer had. The fire crackled softly inside the shelter. The raiders were gone, defeated. The children clung to him, their small voices whispering thanks. The mother stood frozen, her mind torn. She knew this human was dangerous to her heart. Yet she also knew something undeniable. He had saved them, not once, but twice. That night, when the human sat by the fire, cleaning his wound, the mother did not sit as far away as before. She stayed closer, her children asleep between them. Her pride still whispered warnings, but another voice was louder, the voice of hope, rising again in the ruins of her broken life. The night after the fight was heavy with silence. The fire burned low, and smoke curled lazily into the air. The human sat near the flames, cleaning the wound on his arm. His knife lay beside him, and his eyes were half closed with exhaustion. The mother sat across from him, her children sleeping between them. She could hear the soft breaths of her son and daughter, peaceful for the first time in weeks. Her gaze lingered on the human's arm. Blood had dried around the cut, and though he tried to hide it, she could see the pain in the way he moved. She wanted to ignore it. He was not her kin, not her concern. Yet she could not. Something inside her twisted with guilt. He had bled for them. He had stood against death while she hid with her children. Her pride screamed at her to stay cold, but her heart would not obey. Slowly, she reached into her torn cloak and pulled out a small cloth. She crawled closer to the human, her movements hesitant. He looked up, surprised, his eyes narrowing. For a moment, she thought he would refuse her, push her away. But he did not. He stayed still, silent, watching as she pressed the cloth against his wound. The human winced, but he did not pull back. She cleaned the blood carefully, her hands trembling. The silence between them was thick, broken only by the crackling fire and the soft breaths of the children. She whispered, almost against her will, "Why? Why do you do this for us?" His eyes met hers, steady and calm. "Because no one else would," he answered. The words were simple, but they struck her like thunder. No one else would. She knew it was true. Her people had turned their backs on her, too afraid to help. But this human, a stranger, had risked his life for her children. She lowered her eyes, unable to hold his gaze. Her pride felt like shattered glass inside her. For so long, she had believed her people were stronger, nobler, and that humans were weak. But this man had shown her something different. Strength not in power, but in choice. When she finished cleaning his wound, she sat back, wrapping her arms around herself. She did not thank him. The words stuck in her throat. But her actions had spoken already, and she knew he understood. The next day, the children followed him closely as he searched the ruins for supplies. The boy clung to his leg, laughing softly despite the sadness still in his eyes. The girl asked him questions, curious about his past, his world. He answered little, but his voice was gentle with them, never harsh. The mother watched from a distance, torn between fear and a strange warmth that grew stronger with each passing moment. At one point, the boy stumbled and fell. The human picked him up without hesitation, carrying him on his shoulders. The child's laughter rang through the ruins, echoing like a song the mother thought she would never hear again. Her eyes filled with tears, but she quickly wiped them away before anyone could see. Later, when they rested by a broken wall, the girl whispered something that froze the mother's heart. She looked at the human and said, "You fight like father. You protect us like he did." The human's face softened, but he said nothing. The boy added, "You can be our father now." The mother's chest tightened. She wanted to stop them, to scold them, to remind them that their father was gone, that no one could replace him. But her children's eyes were bright, filled with hope. For the first time since the war, they were smiling, alive, unafraid. She could not take that away from them. That night, as they sat by the fire again, the mother's thoughts tormented her. The children had already begun to see him as family. Every laugh, every smile, every word of thanks tied them closer to him. She feared what this meant. If she allowed it, would they forget their real father? Or was this human giving them something even their own people had denied? A chance to live, to hope, to love again? The human sat quietly, sharpening his knife. The firelight reflected in his eyes, steady and calm. He did not try to force anything. He did not ask for the children's trust, yet he had it. He did not ask for her respect, yet she found herself giving it. When the children finally fell asleep, she whispered softly, almost too low to hear, "They see you as their father." The human looked at her, his face unreadable. After a long pause, he said, "Then I must be worthy of it." His words sent a shiver through her. They were not spoken with arrogance, not with pride, but with quiet promise. She turned her gaze away, unable to meet his eyes. For the first time, she felt her walls breaking, her pride fading. She hated it, yet she could not stop it. The children slept peacefully between them, their small hands clutching the human's cloak. The mother watched as he gently adjusted the boy's blanket, careful not to wake him. Her heart ached. She wanted to push him away, to keep him at a distance. But deep inside, she knew the truth. The children already belonged to him in spirit, and though she fought against it, a part of her heart was beginning to belong to him too. The road to the settlement was long and rough. Broken trees lay across the path, and the air smelled of damp earth after the storm. The mother carried her son on her back, while her daughter walked beside her, holding tightly to her hand. The human led the way, his eyes sharp, always scanning the shadows as if danger could rise at any moment. The children trusted him completely now. Every time they stumbled, they reached for him, not her. Every time they laughed, their eyes searched for his face. The mother's heart was heavy. She had heard whispers of a nearby settlement, a place where her people had gathered after the raids. She knew if they could reach it, her children might finally be safe, with food and shelter. But she also knew what her people thought of humans. They would not allow one inside. They might even see him as a threat. She told herself she was ready for this choice, but deep inside, fear ate at her. By evening, the walls of the settlement came into view. They were made of stone and scrap metal, patched together in haste. Guards stood at the gate, their eyes sharp and their weapons ready. The children gasped with relief. "We'll be safe now," the girl whispered. The mother smiled weakly, but her eyes flicked toward the human. His face gave nothing away. He did not slow his steps, though she saw the way the guards stared at him with suspicion. When they reached the gate, the guards raised their hands to stop them. One of them, an older man with scars across his face, stepped forward. He looked at the mother, then at the human. "You can enter," he said to her, his voice rough, "but not him." The children froze. The boy's small hands clutched the human's arm. "No, he comes with us," he shouted. The girl nodded fiercely. "He saved us. He's our father now." The mother's heart cracked. She had feared this moment, and now it was here. The guard frowned. "He is human. We do not trust their kind. If you want safety, you must leave him behind." The children began to cry, clinging to the human. The mother felt her chest tighten. She could not deny the truth. Her children loved him now. To them, he was family, but her people's law was strict. If she chose him, the settlement might turn them away. She looked at the walls, imagining her children safe inside, with food and warmth. Then she looked at the human, standing silently, his eyes steady, not begging, not demanding. The silence stretched. The guards grew impatient. "Decide quickly," the scarred man snapped. "We will not repeat ourselves." The mother's pride screamed at her to protect her people's rules, to obey the law. But her heart, her love as a mother, screamed louder. She saw her children's faces, their small arms wrapped around the human, refusing to let go. She remembered the nights he had kept them alive, the way he had stood against raiders, the way he bled for them. Her mate was gone, but this man had become what no one else would. She straightened her back and spoke, her voice clear despite the tremble in her chest. "If he does not enter, then neither do we." The guard stared at her, shocked. "You would choose him over your own people?" Her hands shook, but she held her children close and answered, "I choose the one who chose us when no one else would." The boy buried his face against the human's side, and the girl squeezed his hand tighter. The human finally spoke, his voice calm but firm. "You don't have to do this. I can survive outside. You and the children will be safe here." The mother turned to him, her eyes blazing with tears. "Without you, they are not safe. Without you, they are not whole." The guards muttered among themselves. Some scoffed, others shook their heads. Finally, the scarred man spat on the ground. "Then leave. We don't need traitors among us." The gates remained shut. The mother's heart ached, but she did not back down. She turned away from the settlement, her children clinging to the human's arms. As they walked back into the misty woods, she felt fear. Fear of hunger, fear of danger, fear of being alone again. But beneath the fear was something stronger. Certainty. She had chosen not with pride, not with law, but with love. That night, they found shelter under the branches of a fallen tree. The fire burned low, its light flickering across their tired faces. The children leaned against the human, their eyes heavy with sleep. The mother sat across from him, watching silently. Finally, she whispered, "I gave up everything for them once. I will not do it again. If they see you as their father, then so do I." The human's eyes softened, but he did not speak. He only nodded, as if he understood more than words could say. The mother leaned back against the tree, her heart trembling. She had turned away from her people, from the safety she once longed for. But when she looked at her children, peaceful and smiling in their sleep, she knew she had made the only choice that mattered. And though the road ahead was uncertain, she no longer felt alone. She had her children. She had him. Together, they were no longer broken fragments of the past. They were something new, something stronger. They were a family. The days after leaving the settlement were not easy. The forest was cold and wild, and food was scarce. The mother worried every night that she had doomed her children by turning away from her people. But then she would see the human, always walking ahead, always searching for food, always keeping watch while they slept. He never once complained. He never once asked for thanks. Each day, he gave everything he had to keep them alive. Slowly, her fear of failure began to fade. The children grew stronger in his care. The boy laughed again, climbing on the human's shoulders and calling him father without hesitation. The girl, though older and wiser, followed him closely, asking questions, learning from him as if he were her teacher. Their eyes were brighter, their steps lighter. The mother watched them, her heart torn between sorrow for the past and gratitude for the present. One evening, as the sun bled red across the sky, they found a quiet valley. Grass grew tall, and a small stream ran through the middle. Birds returned to the trees, and the air smelled clean. For the first time in many weeks, it did not feel like a place touched by war. The children splashed in the water, their laughter echoing like music through the valley. The human watched them with tired but gentle eyes. The mother sat beside him, silent at first. Her pride still whispered against the bond forming between them, but she could not deny what she saw. He was no longer just a stranger who had given them bread. He was the one who had faced storms, beasts, and raiders to protect her children. He had become their shield, their guide, their father. Slowly, she whispered, "They belong to you now." The human turned to her, his face unreadable in the fading light. "No," he said softly, "they belong to you. I only walk beside you." Her eyes burned with tears. For so long she had carried the weight of loss and guilt. But his words reminded her of something she had forgotten, that she was not alone anymore. She did not have to carry everything by herself. He had chosen to stand with her, and that choice was stronger than any bloodline or law. That night, as they sat around the fire, the children curled up close to the human. The girl whispered, "Tell us a story." The boy echoed her, tugging on his cloak. The human hesitated, then began to speak in his low, steady voice. He told them of his world, far away, of skies filled with stars and oceans wider than anything they had seen. His words painted pictures in the children's minds, and they listened with wide eyes until they drifted into dreams. The mother listened too. She had never cared for human stories before, but now every word seemed to carry a hidden warmth. It was not just a story, it was a promise of hope, of a future her children could still have. She realized then that family was not about who shared your blood. It was about who stood by you when the world turned against you. The days passed, and the valley became their home. They built a small shelter together, using wood and stone. The human worked hard, his hands rough and blistered, but he never slowed down. The mother helped, though her strength was not as great. The children gathered berries, carried small stones, and laughed as they tried to be part of the work. Piece by piece, they created a place of safety. One morning, while the children played by the stream, the mother approached the human. Her voice was steady, though her heart raced. "I was wrong about you," she said quietly. "I thought humans were only trouble, only pain. But you gave my children life again. You gave me hope." The human looked at her, his expression calm. "I only did what anyone should do," he said, but she shook her head. "No. Others turned their backs. You stayed." For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then the little boy ran to them, holding a flower he had picked. "For you, father," he said, placing it in the human's hand. The girl smiled shyly and added, "For our family." The mother's breath caught. The word family rang in her ears. She looked at the human, who stared at the flower in his hand. His face softened, and for the first time, he allowed himself a small smile. That night, as the fire burned bright, the mother made her choice clear. She stood with her children and spoke to the human. "You are their father now, not by blood, but by heart. And if they call you that, then I will too." The children clapped and cheered, their voices full of joy. The human said nothing at first, but his eyes shone with something deep, something unspoken. Finally, he nodded. "Then I will be what they need." The stars filled the sky above them, bright and endless. The firelight danced across their faces. For the first time since she had lost everything, the mother felt whole. The emptiness inside her was no longer a void. It was filled with laughter, warmth, and the steady presence of the man who had become the father her children needed. They were no longer broken fragments, no longer survivors crawling through ruins. They were a family, built not by law or blood, but by choice, sacrifice, and love. And as the children drifted to sleep, their small hands resting in the humans, the mother knew the truth. Even in the ashes of everything lost, they had found something stronger. They had found each other.